Let's go international and cap the UAE Derby and Saudi World Cup. Salutations and welcome, friends. I'm your host to this Trust the Profits Stakes Preview. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and you can find me on Twitter at the handle at Failed to Menace. Well, this is a very special stakes preview as we're going overseas to Maidan. We're going to the UAE Derby. We're going to the Saudi World Cup. These are two huge races. Obviously, the UAE Derby has significant Kentucky Derby implications. The UAE Derby, a huge race for Japan, for the United States, some huge international contestants. So we're excited to talk about these two races. Before we get there, make sure to press that subscribe button here on Trust the Profits. We got a ton of different horse racing coverage if it's your first time watching. If you're interested in the Kentucky Derby, trust me, we got plenty of information about prep races, about getting the barn tours and going around and talking about and looking at all of the different trainers and the horses they're going to be bringing. We have betting shows like the Thursday Night Lounge and live betting, doubling down with Colin Sheehan. We got traditional handicapping episodes like Capping the Card with me, where I go through an entire card and give you my top pick, top value play. We got graded stakes previews from the formula. We got the Win Play show, which recaps all of this information on Monday mornings. We have so much content for you. Make sure to press that subscribe button and be a part of Trust the Profits. Make sure to like this video and comment below with who's your top pick in the UAE Derby and the Saudi World Cup. Would love to hear from you. We had a lot of international viewers, a lot of international commenters in the comments below when I did the Saudi World Cup about a month ago, and it was great. Love getting all of your feedback. Love getting your insight. Always enjoy interacting with fans from across the world. Well, this is obviously a huge race weekend as it relates to the UAE Derby and the Dubai World Cup. And we have two really intriguing fields. Obviously, one of the storylines, the domination of Japan between these two races alone. They have 12 entries, 5 in the UAE Derby, 7 in the Dubai World Cup. Just absolutely incredible to see how much their horses have taken center stage on these huge international days. But the UAE Derby, very critical points race for the Kentucky Derby. The winner gets 100 points and basically an automatic bid to the Kentucky Derby. The second place horse gets 40 points and in all likelihood also gets enough points to qualify for the field for the Kentucky Derby. So really, first two places will qualify for the Derby. We've never had a UAE Derby winner come over and win the Derby. This would be something that would be obviously unprecedented. So we'll see. But we have some very interesting contestants this year. The Japanese have been entering more and more quality horses, and there's an Aidan O'Brien special in the UAE Derby. So let's jump in, and what we'll do is talk through the field a little bit, and I'll give you some thoughts on who I like up top. I'll give you some thoughts in terms of value that you might want to look at, talk a little bit about the pace setup in some of these races, and what we can expect on a very thrilling Saturday morning here on the East Coast of the United States, but wherever you might be watching across the world. Well, let's start things off with the 13 horse field of the UAE Derby, grade 2, a mile and a 16th, 3/16ths, I should say. That's significant. That's a longer distance than most of these horses have ever run before. These are 4 3-year-olds. A lot of these 3-year-olds will stretching out for the first time. Many of these horses ran in the Saudi Derby not that long ago. That was only a mile. Now we're stretching out significantly and going to a mile and 3/16ths. Also, here's the thing. Maidan, anybody who has ever followed this track knows it's a deeper dirt track, meaning it doesn't favor early speed as much as some other dirt tracks might. This is something we saw last year with a horse like Life is Good in the Dubai World Cup. Getting tired on the front end. This is a deep dirt track, and it can wear out front runners a little bit. So you look for horses coming from mid-pack, coming from a little further back a lot of times. At least that's the way I like to handicap this, particularly when going a new distance as these 3-year-olds are in this particular race. But you can see the number 3 horse in the 5th post position, and this is something that is confusing if you don't watch international racing much. they get a certain number, but then that is different from their post position. In the United States, your post position is your number, but over there, it is your post position. I have it listed there sequentially 1 through 13, but then you'll see that they're assigned a different number for their saddle cloth. So when you're watching the race, the number 5 horse is actually coming out of the number 1 post, and the number 5 post is coming out with the number 3 horse. It can be confusing. Bottom line, just know, hopefully you know what the horses look like and listen to the call on the TV. But Cairo, the Aidan O'Brien horse, is your favorite, and these are early odds from overseas betting markets that I've accumulated. So that's where I'm getting some of these odds from, if you're curious. But this is a big time horse in Cairo. This is, like I said, an Aidan O'Brien entry. This horse has never been out of the exacta in his career. 5 for 5 with 3 wins, including a grade 3 and a listed stakes win the last 2 times out. Here's the significant part: this horse has won over a synthetic surface. Going a mile, will be stretching out. This should not be an issue from a standpoint of pedigree, though. You have Galileo influence there, and this horse should absolutely eat up all the distance you want to give this horse. Here's the other intriguing thing about Cairo and Aidan O'Brien. Aidan O'Brien brought Cairo in several days before he normally brings his horses over to Meydan. This was a new tactic that was pointed out by Laura King, who does a lot of coverage over there for Meydan and for a lot of the UAE Derby and Dubai World Cup. But here's the fascinating part. Aidan O'Brien did the exact same thing this last November in Keeneland for the Breeders' Cup. He brought his horses over earlier than he normally does. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, if you watched any of our Breeders' Cup coverage, you know one of the things I kept pointing out was that Aidan O'Brien had only won 2 out of his last 52 entries at the Breeders' Cup prior to this past year. And this last year, he absolutely cleaned up. Seems like this is a tactical decision on his part to bring his horses over a little bit early, ship them a few days earlier, let them get acclimated, let them get used to the track. That's something that I think is a change that you can absolutely point to that's changed in the last 6 months with his operation and his horses. Obviously, you have the great Ryan Moore on the mount. And I do think Cairo is a very difficult horse to get past here from a pedigree standpoint, from just a class standpoint. Very, very strong contestant, but certainly not the only one. There are several other horses that have already accumulated a significant amount of Kentucky Derby points through winning other Kentucky Derby preps. Let's start with the horse coming out of post position 3, Perrier. I sometimes say Perrier, Perrieri, Perrier. I've heard it pronounced several different ways during the race call, but we'll just go with Perrieri. Perrieri is, I think, one of the top Japanese contenders. I'm actually stunned that you're getting 20-1 odds in some of these overseas early odds. I think that's probably going to go down. This is a horse that won the last time out, won the Hyacinth Stakes, which was a big-time Kentucky Derby prep race. Actually has 36 overall Kentucky Derby points, nearly as enough to qualify as it is. If he picks up any sort of even a 4th or 5th place finish here, he will absolutely have enough points to qualify to come over to run in the starting gate for the Kentucky Derby. Here's the thing about Perrieri. He's a horse that does not fit the mold that we think of for a lot of Japanese horses. We think of Japanese horses as, you know, these kind of forwardly placed horses. Think of Crown Pride last year, things like that. Perrieri comes from a little further back, usually comes from mid-pack and then launches late. The Hyacinth, I thought, was a very good effort, really kicked into gear that last half furlong, really start to show class the more the race wore on. Should like that extra distance. Did lose 2 races back to another horse in this race, breaking from the inside post, Derma Sotogake. Derma Sotogake won the Zen Nippon 2 back ago and should like the distance as well. Perrieri that day, I think, made a move maybe a little too early. It's interesting. You have Ocean Murphy now on Perrieri, a top jockey, obviously, very familiar with these Japanese horses, and won on a Japanese horse in the Breeders' Cup just 2 years ago. So Ocean, knows how to ride these types of horses, has strong connections over in Japan, running in the Middle East as well. And so first of all, also from a personal side, good to see him back healthy, clean, running on the track. A super talented jockey. So very excited for him. Perrier is a horse I'm absolutely going to be using in some capacity, especially if you're going to give me 20 to 1 or even 15 to 1. This is a horse I really like a lot. I think this horse has a lot of talent. Dermasotogake should not be ruled out. That said, this horse was third place last time out in the Saudi Derby and, ran behind a very aggressive pace and really couldn't make up ground. But this is interesting. That was a very speed favoring track, I would argue, that day, and that particular race as well. So I think that Dermasotogake, you put him on a different surface where maybe the front end speed wears out a little bit more. You're stretching out a little bit more. I think this horse is also a pretty interesting horse for a superstar jockey over in Japan, Christophe Lemaire, 12 to 1 early odds. I think both of these horses provide you great opportunity and value. And Perrier, 25 to 1, as I say here on some early odds. I've seen others that have him down at 20. I've seen some betting markets have him at 16 to 1. So there's some fluctuation there with him. But no matter what, you're getting a good price, I think. Let's talk about some of the horses that'll be on the pace. S. Unico, the Brazilian horse breaking from the seventh post, is a really big long shot. I think this is a horse that will absolutely be on the lead or pretty forwardly placed, I would imagine. And is 6 for 7 in the exacta and is stepping up. That said, finished fourth place in the Saudi Derby. So is very capable. But again, I think stretching out a little bit longer, I'm maybe a little less confident in S. Unico being able to bring this one home at a mile and 3/16. The other horse, Worcester. Let's talk about him. The Bob Baffert horse with Frankie Dettori aboard, breaking from the 11th post. This is a horse that has yet to break its maiden in the United States. Is now going over to run in this grade 2. Last time out ran third in the Robert B. Lewis to Newgate, which is a grade 3 race. He's got speed, and Baffert does well over there. I would expect for Worcester to be pretty forwardly placed in this field, particularly because when you look at a lot of these Japanese runners, I know a lot of people have a stereotype of thinking Japanese runners are going to be forward. A lot of these Japanese horses are much more comfortable sitting mid-pack and further back or stalking at most. And so there's not going to be a ton of speed necessarily. And so I do think a horse like Worcester is going to be a pretty forwardly placed horse. Bob Baffert, Frankie Dettori, hard to really argue with those connections. Dettori in particular, amazingly, has won 22% of his mounts in Maidan. Absolutely amazing throughout his career. And this is a huge sample size, actually. So it has something like 120 wins over in Maidan overall. And so 20%, 22% winning percentage for him. Now you'll see there's a couple of other American horses here. A horse like Tall Boy. This is a horse that wasn't able to win in the United States, goes over to Saudi Arabia, goes over to Maidan and wins the grade 3 Saudi Guineas, I should say, and then gets William Buick aboard now. And I think it's a big price, might be worth a shot. This is going to be a step up in competition for Tall Boy, but there's some talent there. And O'Neill had shipped this horse over there with intentions to try to accumulate Derby points for a while. So I think this is the race this horse was always pointed towards. O'Neill has some history with getting horses trained like Hot Rod Charlie, going over there and running well overseas. So I think Tall Boy is a horse to certainly consider and think about in that spot. Continuar to Worcester's outside. 2 for 4 winning, 3 for 4 in the exacta. Did win a Derby prep in Japan over there in November. Again, is more of a mid-pack horse. I do feel like other horses are a little bit better. If you go back and watch the replay of that Derby prep win in November, that horse was starting to lose a little bit of ground, got into the front, made a move, got to the front in the home stretch, but there were some other horses gaining on him late. You wonder, stretching out, how effective he's going to be. Obviously, Yahagi is a phenomenal trainer. Yoshida Yahagi, great trainer. And so if there's any trainer that's going to get this horse ready for the day, it's him. But still, I think it's fair to ask some questions in that space. Geez, another American horse for Doug O'Neill, breaking from the 4 post. This is a turf horse, actually, that won twice in the United States, was even in the Eddie Reed and in some other graded stakes races on the turf. Now is going to the dirt, did finish second in Maidan in a conditional race that still feels like a very tall task for him. Does get Tyler Gaffleone, who goes overseas for the races this weekend. So you get a really nice jockey there. But this is, I think, a race where when you take a look at it, I know a lot of people are going to zero in on Worcester, the Baffert horse, and they're going to zero in on Cairo, the Aidan O'Brien horse. Of the two, I prefer Cairo. I think Worcester is a good horse, but has not been able to get the job done in the United States. Now, that said, a lot of times you see horses that can't get the job done in the US, they go overseas, they have more success there. Tall Boy, for instance, as I just mentioned, couldn't break his maiden here, goes over there, wins a grade 3. The thing is, this came up, I think, as a pretty strong race. Worcester, I just think, is kind of up against it here with Cairo. Cairo's ultimately going to be my top pick, but I'm going to really use a lot of value underneath. I'm absolutely going to be using Perrieri. I'm going to be using Derma Sotogake. These are two horses I really like a lot. I think they're going to benefit from the extra distance. I think they're going to benefit from the way this track plays out a little bit. So I'm going to be using them underneath as well. That's the way I'm going to go. Dura Erede is another horse in the 8th post position that I'm also going to be using. And I apologize for not mentioning him earlier. This is a horse that won the Hopeful Stakes last time out at Nakatomi and went a mile and a quarter. Dura Erede is absolutely a horse you have to take seriously here because this horse can do the distance. This horse did it in grade 1 competition, group 1 competition over in Japan. And this horse started his career a little bit slow and has done nothing but win lately. And so Dora Erede in that 7th post position, absolutely a horse I'm using. So I'm going to be using Cairo, Dora Erede, Perrieri, and Derma Sotogake. Those are the 4 horses I'm going to be using in some capacity in my bets for this UAE Derby, but should be a really thrilling race. Well, let's move to the headliner, the Dubai World Cup, grade 1, and going a mile and a quarter for 4-year-olds and up. And this is a 15 horse field. This is something else. And you'll see that the favorite in this is the American horse, number 4, Country Grammar, the Bob Baffert horse, trying to go back-to-back years. And I'll be honest, this race just feels custom made for him. This feels like a race that is just made for Country Grammar. The deep dirt track, the fact it's even a little bit longer, you're stretching out even more. Horses are going to start getting tired. And what's Country Grammar going to do? He's going to keep coming, keep grinding, keep getting there. And that's the type of horse he is. That's how he won last year. It's how I think he's going to win again this year. You're not going to get great odds on him, but I think he's the absolute best horse in this race. I just really love him a lot here and think this is, again, the type of race he wins over there. And I think that's why I'm maybe a little less confident in Pantalasa, who, of course, won the Saudi Derby, Saudi Cup, I should say, last time out. And very capable horse, but you know what Pantalasa's MO is going to be, which is go to the front. And I always am going to be skeptical of seeing speed win at Maidan with the way that track plays. A reminder last year with Life is Good. Remember, really fading down the stretch. Now, some might say Life is Good just can't get a mile and a quarter. It also didn't help that Life is Good was running a mile and a quarter on that particular track. I think that Pantalasa is certainly dangerous. The speed is there, showed what he can do last time out. But I do think this one is going to be a tougher time to get there on this particular track. Now, you're getting better odds, of course, and so that's worth taking into consideration. But I just really do like Country Grammar in this particular race. But there are some other horses to talk about. Algiers, the Irish horse for Simon and Ed Crisford, 3 for 5. Won 3 for 5 starts on the dirt in Maidan, including 2 grade 2s and a grade 3. So this horse can absolutely handle the dirt in Maidan at high level races. That said, I think it's fair to question the competition level. The last time out, winning in a grade 2 race, the 2nd and 3rd place finishers were Bendug, the number 2 horse, and Remorse, number 10 horse. Why do I bring that up? Because those 2 horses are both 50-1 on the early odds. So it's fair to quote, who did he really beat in the last race? I think he's a very talented horse. He's got a very good resume that would speak to certainly being a 3-1 second choice. I'm willing to try to get past Algiers, though, especially if I like Country Grammar up top. Want to look for some other value in some other spots here. One place I probably will be looking is a little bit further to the outside, the always lucky 13th post, Teo Keynes. This is a horse very accomplished, has not won much lately, but a very accomplished horse that can do the distance, has won going a mile and a quarter, very strong competition, coming off a second place finish, going a mile and 5/16, actually a little longer last time out. So I do like the fact this horse can absolutely handle the distance. You have the great Ocean Murphy up aboard again. You get Daisuke as a trainer, who's fantastic. So there's a lot to like there with Teo Keynes. Like this horse a lot. And the fact that you're getting 12-1 early odds, really like that price. Another horse that was a little disappointing last time out that has Ryan Moore on the mount now is John Lightbolt. I was a little disappointed last time. This is a horse that has won going the distance and even beat Crown Pride doing it. At a price, I think this horse is absolutely worth a shot. He is a little bit older than some of the other horses, only 7 wins and 26 starts. But like I said, I know he can do the distance. He's beaten other horses in this field, and he's done it at a high level. I'm willing to take a shot, maybe a second time in an international stage outside of Japan. I think maybe he runs a little bit better. So John Lightbolt, horse I'm absolutely going to be considering using underneath at 20-1 early odds at a big price. Geoglyph is a horse that's kind of interesting. The number 7 finished 4th in that Saudi Cup. This horse just doesn't win as much for my liking. This horse is only 3 for 9 winning, 4 for 9 in the money. He's run well, but I just feel like this is a horse that is going to probably get some more minor awards. Obviously, big time jockey with Christophe Lemaire, but I'm willing to try to, like I said, maybe get past Geoglyph. Not that he's a huge price, but it's a short price, I should say. But at 16-1, I'm probably going to be looking elsewhere. One of the horses that I will just draw your attention to is on the far outside, Ushba Tesoro, the number 14 horse. This is a winner. Might be a little bit deceiving, and you might see the price 9-1, go, wow, he must be a pretty serious contender. He is and he isn't, I think. Yes, he's won 4 straight, 5 of his last 6. That said, he's only won 8 for 28 in his career. So 5 of his 8 races have 5 of his 8 wins have come in the last 6 races. So he was basically 3 for 22 before that in terms of winning. Now you'll see if you go back and look at his past performances, he did win a grade 1 a couple races back, but it's important to point out that was at a secondary track in Japan. So, there's those primary tracks governed by the JRA, and there are secondary tracks that are NAR tracks. He's won on some of these NAR tracks, but I do think it's fair to question how good some of the competition is that he's gone up against. And so I wouldn't be too enthralled necessarily with his recent record and form, because this is going to be a much tougher field for him. So 9-1, a little too short of a price for me in this particular spot. Super Quarantino is an interesting horse. The number 12 horse from Argentina actually racked up a bunch of wins in Chile, came up to Gulfstream Park, actually did win an allowance race at Gulfstream Park in December against Clapton and Mish. So some decent competition. This still feels like a really big step up for Super Quarantino, though, in this particular spot. Crown Pride, I like Crown Pride a lot. Of course, the other horse that I love is Cafe Faro in this particular spot, the number 3 horse. One of the top Japanese horses, finished coming on strong, finished 3rd in that Saudi Cup and was closing strong and has never won at 10 furlongs. That, like I said, this is a deep track there. I think there are some legitimate distance questions with Cafe Faro, but he looked really good in that Saudi Cup. And I like to think that he could continue to keep going if the race kept going a little bit longer and would have continued to improve. So how am I going to play this Dubai World Cup? Well, like I said, I like Country Grammar up top. I think there's going to be, I don't necessarily know there's going to be a ton of pace. I know Ponthalosa is going to go out and going to run. The question is, who else is going to run with Ponthalosa? I think a few other horses might. Here's the thing, though. I think no matter what the pace is, that track is going to wear people down. The distance is going to wear people down. And here's the thing. Country Grammar, I always say he grinds. Last time at that Saudi Cup, he showed a great burst of speed coming down the home stretch. That was the best I think Country Grammar's looked in a while. I think those horse is absolutely ready to go. I think he's cranked up. I think this is going to be his best effort yet. And so I really like Country Grammar to win the Dubai World Cup. But I also like to get a little bit of value. So where am I going to go for value? Well, I'm going to look at Teo Keynes in that 13th post. I'm going to look at John Lightbolt in the 8th post. And I'm probably going to look at Cafe Faro as well in the number 3 post. Look at those 3 horses in some capacity, use them in some different ways underneath of Country Grammar. But that's how I'm going to look at the Dubai World Cup. Well, that's a lot of horses to talk about. Hopefully, I didn't butcher too many pronunciations. But listen, make sure to like this video. Make sure to comment below with who you think is going to win. We got a lot more coverage here on Trust the Profits, from Kentucky Derby preps to graded stakes previews to live betting to all sorts of different handicapping and horse racing news episodes. So make sure to subscribe to our channel. Get all of the latest. We're going to come back on Saturday after these 2 races are run. I'm going to do a quick post-race reaction video reacting to what we saw over there at the UAE Derby and Dubai World Cup. Well, until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace, reminding you to have a great day at the races, and that's a profitable day at the track, and telling you it's now post time.